So as she mentioned, I'm a partner at Felicis. We are a multi-stage venture capital fund in San Francisco. We write $1 to $40 million checks into seed through Series B stage startups, any sector, any geography, basically any stage. So I focus on AI, and we have some great AI practitioners here. Maybe take 30 seconds, each of you, to describe who you are, what your company does.
Cool. So I'm Iván Martínez. I'm CEO at Cylon. We are creators of the most popular open source project on privacy and AI, which is called PrivateGPT. And now, on top of that, we're building Cylon, which is a private, all-in-one AI-powered workspace for companies that have the budget to incorporate AI into their company, but they don't have the headcount. So that's where we're fitting as a service that is ready to use and is for non-technical people.
I'm James Clough. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Robin AI. We're a legal AI company building a co-pilot, an AI-driven assistant for the legal sector, for lawyers, paralegals who work with contracts. And we're selling it to private equity funds, financial institutions, and in-house legal teams in regulated sectors.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Chong, Shen. I'm a research engineer at Flower Labs. And at Flower Labs, we're building the friendly federated learning framework. So what this framework allows you to do is to be able to train your models in a very distributed way, in a very easy way as well. So instead of bringing the data to where your models sit, our framework allows you to then bring your models to the data and then train them in a very privacy-preserving way. Yeah.
So I was thinking, what is a common thread between Flower, Robin, and Cylon? And the first thing that came to mind, obviously, is privacy. Cylon, creator of PrivateGPT. Robin, where attorney-client privilege is kind of a hallmark of the legal industry. And Flower, which bakes data privacy into training models. Can we just talk a little bit about what it's like building AI products around this central constraint of privacy? What has that experience been like working with customers? Is privacy just kind of a foot in the door, something you start with, or is it something you have to constantly guarantee to your buyers?
Yeah, no, I think it's key. Like, privacy is a concern for every type of customer, even more for big enterprises, but also for SMEs. And I think there's different levels to privacy, but it all starts with infrastructure. So you really need to be careful when designing the system and really invest in real private infrastructure. So like SOC 2 certification is not enough. Like, you can be SOC 2 certified and still use a bunch of providers, and then there's a lot of vectors of attack or failure. That's my opinion. So, for example, we are investing in hosting everything ourselves, so we reduce the attack vectors a lot. And then there's other layers of privacy on top. I would say, like, there's even application layer privacy, where you let the end customer to control who accesses what. So I think that's how we're approaching privacy, the privacy issue.
Yeah, I think anybody building AI at the application layer now needs to be taking this very seriously. And the reason is that you should be betting that capabilities of foundation models are going to continue to improve very quickly over the next few years. And then if you ask yourself, why are big businesses or why are your potential customers not using AI to do all of their work today? The answer today might be capabilities, but it won't be in 2 years or 3 years. The thing that might be stopping them from using AI or your product to do all of their work is privacy, security, and concerns about safety. So today, there are some sectors where that's already the main blocker, not capabilities, but in a few years, that's going to be the main blocker across most applications. And that means that it's worth investing what feels like, I think, a very disproportionate amount of your resource into solving those problems today. But if you think that you're going to generate billions of dollars of value by automating some work, and the thing that's going to stop that happening is concerns about privacy and security, then it's worth investing billions of dollars to solve those problems up front.
Yeah. Well, what I can say about adopting AI systems in general is that you want to be able to make use of the data that you have. So across different sectors, this data is more likely, more often than not, distributed and very difficult to try and move. Right? So the way that we think about it is that to speed up how you deploy your AI systems is to have these models learning on your local data. So when your data is local, it is private, so you maintain all the sensitive information, and you don't have to worry so much about moving all this data across. So when you have this mechanism, this flywheel of being able to refine and all your models over time, without moving all your data from the point of generation, this is where privacy becomes like an important consideration for AI systems. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about designing AI systems. So this is something that comes up every single week in San Francisco. What is the next iteration of the chatbot? How are we going to break through from this simple kind of chat interface with LLMs? There has to be something more. We see kind of early indications of new abstractions like AI agents and copilots and even AI hardware, but we're also seeing varying degrees of adoption and embracing these new UI, UX patterns. I'd love to hear from you guys building actual AI products. Like, to what extent are you embracing this new opportunity to design like a new abstraction for AI products? And to what extent are you relying on kind of older primitives?
Want to take it?
Yeah, go for it, Gus.
All right. So I think at the end of the day, we are building product. Just to be clear, the way we look at, for example, ChatGPT. ChatGPT was not built from a product development perspective. It's like a showcase of a model, and that's just fine. But when you're building products for end users, you need to follow already existing good product development practices. So the first thing we did at Cylon, for example, is we hired an UX researcher, because everything is to be understood. Like, you really need to understand the use cases and then go from there to the technology, and not the other way around, like starting with the LLM and see, okay, how can we expose this to the user? That's the way we're approaching it, basically. So we are not reinventing the wheel from a process perspective. We are following best practices from a product development perspective and applying it to these new capabilities.
Yeah, I think that is the right way to think about it, that we're going to see just the improvement in capabilities being so rapid. It means it's going to unlock a lot of new kinds of UX and UI that we didn't really have before. And I think sort of analogous to creating a sort of, going from text-based to a graphical user interface for interacting with your personal computer. And that's going to generate a whole load of new design patterns that feel unfamiliar now in the same way the kind of computer mouse and cursor felt unfamiliar at the time. And it's going to be really exciting to see which of those play out. We're starting to see some of those changes now, but it's still pretty early days. I think as someone building in the space, you have to balance the desire to be the people originating those new patterns with the fact that your users are fundamentally just familiar with certain tropes already, and if you want them to productively work with your software, then buying into those patterns is kind of useful. And it's probably going to look a little bit different, I think, on B2C applications, where it makes sense to be a little bit more experimental and to try to have that sort of magic feeling a little bit more. Perhaps in more B2B applications where there's more of a focus on reliability more than creativity, then having a more structured approach to interacting with your AI, whether it's via agents or chat or something else, is probably going to be more useful there. But that more creative, personal assistant approach, I think that magic chat interface is probably going to come to dominate.
Yeah, if I may add a little bit to that, I like to think of this perspective as, well, it's complementing these two companies here, is that from Flower's perspective, right, we think about training the models, whereas you can also think about improving the design in general from the inference perspective. That's when you want to use the outputs of the models, when you want to consume them, you can tailor your UI, UX accordingly. When companies want to use their data and actually fine-tune and train the models, it opens up also a different avenue of making sure that your design is sufficiently friendly for your users to throw the data at the model to be trained. So one example I could give is that we've seen use cases in hospitals where they want to try to train models that can detect certain images from CT scans. But these people, these radiologists, they would not be familiar with any of these processes at all. So one of a sort of like a crude user experience there is to tell them you just need to drop drop your images in a certain folder, in a certain structure that can help them speed up the process of training the models there. So that is just a very simple scenario, but of course, there's some considerations needs to be done to allow users to train models more easily on their local data.
Question for James. So there's a lot of discussion around AI services today, and a big kind of open secret that AI is going to, or AI products are going to dip into labor budgets in a way that the last generation of software was dipping into productivity budgets. We're seeing, at my firm, AI native accounting firms, AI native law firms. Then we're also seeing some forward-thinking traditional accounting firms and law firms embrace AI tools. So my question to you is how does this play out? Are we truly going through this kind of AI service automation renaissance right now, or is it a little bit overblown? Do we not even have the models that can reason, plan, and take action well enough to automate the services we're talking about?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, at Robin, we've really leaned into services, and that means that we want to offer, at least to some customers who want this, sort of a whole service where we'll take on the risk of whether or not our AI agent today can do the whole thing or not, and we'll have people fill the gap while we're building the rest of that technology. And that's been very sort of tactically useful from a sort of sales perspective, because when you think about legal budgets, big banks have budgets of hundreds of millions of dollars for legal fees, but they don't have budgets of hundreds of millions of dollars for buying productivity software, right, or AI. And being able to tap into that pre-existing budget, and there's someone whose job it is to buy legal services, who you need to talk to, whereas there isn't somebody whose job, at least most companies, is to go and buy productivity software who has that kind of budget. I think a few years ago that was quite an unpopular stance, because at least in part, not all, but most investors, most VCs thought that services were a little bit unsexy because they didn't scale well or because the margins weren't very good. But at least in legal, I think that's not been the case, right? The margins are good, at least in part because the margins that law firms have are pretty good, even if they don't do anything to make themselves more productive. And the scaling of the service can be made a lot better by the fact that using AI internally means you don't need to have people with years and years of training to do complicated legal work. We have a boot camp where we take in essentially fresh graduates, give them 6 weeks of training, and then they plus our co-pilot are capable of doing pretty complex legal work, and that makes it possible to scale that part of the business because there's loads of fresh graduates out there who want to go and do this work. So I think in a way, we and other businesses as well have kind of proven that services with AI enabled is a really scalable, high margin business, and investors are now starting to see that that's the case, and that's going to drive, I think, more startups to go in that direction as well.
Totally. At Felicis, we see it as kind of a set of successive floodgates that are opening. I think the floodgates are open in legal tech and some pockets of compliance. The floodgates are open with AI automation for customer success. The floodgates are not open yet for automating the work of, like a teacher or a healthcare professional. Industries that are highly regulated or more sensitive for kind of this type of service automation, I think, I believe we won't see that type of automation for a while.
Yeah, I think a key differentiator is whether or not the work is primarily text in, text out, right? Lots of legal work and accounting is, text goes in, an email or a document, and text comes out, a response or an edited version of that document. I think jobs that are very face-to-face, like teaching, or that require physical interaction with the world, are going to be amongst the later to get that adoption.
Couldn't agree more. All right, question for Chong, Shen, and Iván. So earlier there was a talk about just how wildly difficult it is to hire excellent ML talent. We've talked a little bit about how difficult it is to build an AI startup when the underlying models are getting better and better. So there's a ton of challenges facing AI startups today. But one of the key differentiators I'm seeing with great companies is community. A lot of great early AI startups build a great community around their product. talk to me a little bit about Xylon and Flower's community and how it served as an asset to the company so far.
All right. So yeah, in our case, we started as an open source project that we still keep and maintain. It's followed by more than 50,000 developers, and the community is around 4,500 developers active every day. So we just hired a new AI engineer, and the first thing we did is go to the community, and that was great. Like checking your contributions, like you can really tell who is the right person. Even in our technical interview or test was include like your own contribution to the repository and make it valuable. And that's what this guy did in this case. It was great. Like it was great for all parts. So that's an amazing. Like that's only can come from these communities because this technology is so early that there's no specific profiles that you can find out of a certain university. Like you really need to find like some sort of unicorn that is part researcher, part data analyst, but also part software engineer. This doesn't really exist, and it's like people that are really builder type of mindset.
Yeah, well, very much like Xylon, the roots of Flower originate from an open source project as well. In fact, we are still now open source, which means that you can find us online on GitHub. You can actually get the framework up and running, and you can actually get your federated learning system is going on your local data as well. The community is extremely important to us. We are very active on Slack. We have Slack channels for community. In fact, we also hold the Flower Summit, which we organized about 2 months ago now. That was one of my most successful Flower Summits, where researchers and users from all around the world are invited to give a talk and showcase what they build with Flower itself. And that turns out to be, as far as we can tell, is one of the largest federated learning oriented summits in the world. So from that, we also establish contacts into the research and the user industries. And at least I can speak from personal experience, being able to see how transparent Flower is in terms of the user base, in terms of how new features or new pain points are being addressed as part of the federated learning system itself is very, very key. So working in Flower, you really want to focus on a talent pool which is very forward-looking, very hungry, and eager to adopt new ideas, yet being very pragmatic to solve the real-world problems using federated learning.
Excellent. Before we wrap up, rapid fire. We're 18 months after the ChatGPT singularity. I want to hear a bold prediction for the next 5 years on where you think AI is headed. It could be B2B, consumer, whatever. Iván, you want to start?
Okay, my first one, I think AI is going to disappear. Like it's going to disappear from the headlines. Like AI is a technology, the same way cloud computing was at some point. But AI is just a technology, and we're going to start talking about use cases. So AI by itself has no value. It's just a technology, the same way streaming by itself has no value. So in 3-5 years' time, we won't be talking about AI.
Interesting. I disagree with that, but my prediction is that AI is going to make it a lot easier to build companies, and we're going to see in 5 years the first sort of one-person unicorn, just one person, their AI agents, their AI assistants, building a giant, really valuable company.
Love it.
I want to go beyond the Earth. I think AI will be very big in robotics in space. So think about high-risk applications where you want to send robotics for exploration in other planets. You can send them at higher speeds. You don't have to worry about with people in the planes and stuff like that. Looking at these multimodal robots as well, they can learn as they explore. I think that's a very big deal.
Love it. My prediction is this. Similar space as Chong Shen's prediction of robotics. We're going to see a mainstream application of robotics in the home that's doing something far more complex than what we've seen in the past, like iRobot vacuuming your floors. We're going to see something go mainstream that does more sophisticated tasks, maybe like folding your laundry. All right. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.